Welcome everybody. Good morning. Lovely day today, and thank you very much for being with us again for our fourth in the event of our Survive and Thrive series, proudly sponsored by the Newcastle Permanent Building Society. Whilst this event is being delivered across multiple locations, I would like to acknowledge that the Hunter Business Chamber operates across the traditional lands of the Awabakal and Warramai people, and I pay respect to elders past, present, and future knowledge holders. I also extend a warm welcome for any Indigenous people who are joining us online today. I'd also like again to acknowledge the Newcastle Permanent Building Society is a major sponsor for this series, and particularly the efforts of Kirsten Linden in helping us to get this on track and underway. So thank you to the Newcastle Perm, truly a well-recognised and established institution in our region, and we look forward to hearing from them in future series. Without the event platform we normally rely on, the Chamber has had to adapt in order to continue our program of bringing high-profile business and government speakers to our business community. So we are grateful for the support of the firm, and we're also grateful for Mark to give up time out of his very busy diary to be with us today. Mark Fitzgibbon, as you know, is the CEO of NIB, and like every other business in Australia and indeed around the world, NIB has had to navigate the challenges of the current crisis. With over 1,500 employees and more than 1.6 million customers, that process no doubt has involved a lot of adaptation and quick thinking, and I look forward to hearing some of those measures that have been taken by the organisation shortly. Now, as many businesses move to the reopening and recovery phase, we thought it would be valuable to hear from Mark on how his organisation has responded and their plans to ensure business continuity. So welcome, Mark, and thanks for joining us. I'm also accompanied today by our Policy and Public Affairs Manager, Amy Delore, who will assist with questions and discussion today. So whilst most of our audience is muted today, ladies and gentlemen, please, you can leave your screens on, but if you're going to be moving around, maybe close those off as well. And also feel free to use the chat function to log any questions of Mark or comments. And we'll do what we can to moderate those and present them to Mark during or after the presentation. So, Mark, could we start by asking you to give us an outline of how the COVID crisis has affected your organisation to date? So, welcome again, and thanks for being with us.
Thanks, Bob, and g'day everybody. It's a pleasure to be here. Please forgive the headphones and the hat stand backdrop. It's not virtual, it's real. So keeping it real. Look, I put together a couple of slides just for the purposes of today's discussion, and hopefully we'll get through them reasonably quickly. Thanks, Amy, because I think most of what I have to share will be familiar to most of you. It's just a question of, highlighting various health insurance nuances and some of the other thoughts we're having in the business about the future, because I particularly want to focus upon, look, nobody celebrates COVID-19 and the devastating and tragic impact it's had on so many parts of the community, but there are opportunities, as is so often the case in times of crisis, to make lemonade out of lemons, as my old mate Phil Gardner often says, although I think the analogy is a bit lame, but anyway, I think you know what I mean. Okay, so on the first slide I have here, so this is what I want to cover today. So we set about putting in place a very deliberate COVID-19 response. I suppose it's especially poignant for a company in the healthcare arena. We identified some key objectives. First objective was, of course, the health and well-being of our members in the face of the pandemic. A second objective was, look, that we always saw a risk that with weakening economic conditions and employment conditions, that keeping our members was going to be a top priority for us. And how do we support them in order to keep their health insurance? Business continuity was clearly a priority for us, and the financial security of the business, supporting our own people, their wellbeing, health and safety, supporting the communities. We've certainly viewed COVID-19 as an opportunity for us as a company, not just to support our members, as important as they are, but also to support the communities in which they live and work. It was important to us that our investors and other key stakeholders, hospitals and doctors through the crisis, had confidence in our business and what we're doing. And as I've already touched upon, certainly a good part of my focus has been upon, well, look, what good can we make out of this crisis, in this misery? What are the possibilities for our business and health insurance and the healthcare system generally, to make for a better healthcare system. So next slide, please, Amy. As I mentioned, top priority for us was always going to be the health and wellbeing of our customers. Nobody quite was sure how significant this pandemic was going to be. Thankfully, things have gone much better than what I think most of us expected just a few months ago. The ICU across our hospitals didn't grind to a halt, and we've done marvellously well relative to other countries in controlling the pandemic. But what specific initiatives we did take is to extend COVID-19 related treatment for all covers. So many of our policies exclude expensive covers to give people greater choice. And, if a younger person decides that they don't want cover, which excludes, heart surgery, lung surgery, kidney surgery, we respect that and we offer them a product which enables them to carve that out. And in turn, they just rely on the public system. What we have done across all our products, though, is actually include that cover for our members, irrespective of the product they've purchased. We've expanded cover for telehealth consultations across a range of ancillary treatments, so made it possible for people to consult with their dentist or physio or whatever the case may be by telephone and pay a benefit. Similarly, we've extended psychological benefits for all of our extras covers. So pre-COVID-19, about half of our extras ancillary cover didn't include psychological benefits. It now does, at no additional cost, I hasten to add. And we set up a 24/7 health assistance hotline, COVID-19 hotline, although to be honest, it hasn't had that much utilisation, which is a good thing, I suppose. Next slide. Now, hand in hand, quite apart from being altruistic about it, we're obviously commercially interested in retaining and supporting our members. We deferred our normal 1st of April increase this year until the 1st of October. That's cost the business about $34 million in lost premiums. We'll consider further compensation in October. There's a view out there that courtesy of COVID-19, a lot of elective treatment and ancillary treatment, dental, etc., hasn't been able to occur, and therefore our policy holders have effectively had a denial of service during the COVID period. That is true. What we are seeing, though, and we always made a commitment that we would compensate our members for any extraordinary profit associated with that denial of service. What we are seeing, however, though, again, unlike what we imagined even 3 or 4 weeks ago, that hospitals and dentists and other providers are quickly getting back on the grid, and claims are starting to roll again. So the amount of claims savings that we expected, certainly early on in the crisis, is nowhere. It's turning out to be nowhere near those kind of numbers. It will still be not insignificant, and we've still already compensated our members through deferring the premium increase, but we're talking about numbers much smaller than what we anticipated. We've actively offered premium relief to those in financial hardship and allowed people to suspend their cover, as a few, quite a few have on the grounds of financial hardship. That's important for people because, and what we also did, normally if you call NIB and ask to have your cover suspended for 6 months, well, naturally, if you're not paying premiums for 6 months, you get no cover for 6 months. We actually said, no, you can stop paying your premiums, but we'll still cover you for COVID-19 related treatment. And we've done a lot of miscellaneous things, like we provided a $250 discount effectively for frontline healthcare workers, just recognising the additional risks that they face because of COVID-19. Next slide, please, Amy. Business continuity, as it would have been for all of you, it's been very significant. We've activated our business continuity plans. We moved all of our workforce out of offices into mainly home environments, within 2 weeks. An amazing achievement, particularly by our tech people. We're constantly updating our regulators, such as APRA, and our own board. So we had a weekly board meeting for about 6 weeks during the nadir of the crisis. And most importantly, we've been doing extensive scenario modelling, trying to predict what are the commercial implications for the business under various scenarios. So, for example, what if we lost 10% of our membership? What if claims re-spike in fiscal 21 because a lot of this activity has simply been postponed during the COVID-19 crisis. So, we've had a close eye on what various scenarios could unfold and how we manage our capital and profitability during those periods. And look, this is a long shopping list of activities we've undertaken to support our people. I've mentioned working from home. We do regular employee pulse surveys. I've done a town hall every week with all of our 1,600 or so employees. We've expanded our assistance programs. We've actually sought JobKeeper wage subsidy in our travel business. So while the commercial impact of COVID-19 on the health insurance business has been positive because of the deferral or postponement of so much elective treatment, our travel insurance business, which employs about 300 people, we're the third largest travel insurer in Australia, and most of our sales are international. Sales have stopped. And so, we have about a $25-30 million cost base without any revenue in that business. So JobKeeper's been important to that. And look, pleasingly, we've had no reported or suspected COVID-19 cases. Next slide, please, Amy. As I mentioned earlier, we've seen our quest here around COVID-19 responses being as transcending our immediate membership. And again, I won't go through this long list of activities, but we've put aside $1.5 million already to support community activities and new clinical initiatives through a partnership we have with a large pharmaceutical company in China. That's a joint venture, a partnership. We're able to procure 100,000 face masks recently and distribute those to local GPs, pharmacists and healthcare workers. We're supporting the students at Newcastle University. We insure about 200,000 foreign students and international workers. It's quite a significant part of our business. And so obviously their health and well-being and financial security, is important to us. Next slide, please, Amy. Of course, in these times, shareholders get nervous. And I think, our philosophy is, in any crisis, while you may not have the answers because things are uncertain and so unpredictable, people like to be kept informed of what's going on. And, the politicians have made an art form with this, but they're right. They're right to, be out on the front foot, communicating what they do know, what they can predict to the public. And we've taken the same view with our shareholders, particularly when we have so many it's probably a bit of a weak expression, but our mum and dad retail shareholders who get particularly nervous about stocks in these times. Of course, so many of them are relying upon dividends from the company. So we've spent a lot of time in keeping shareholders, both large and small, informed about where the company's at, what we see coming down the pipeline and how we're managing those various scenarios. We've been active in the media and through various other forms of communication in keeping stakeholders informed. And we've been particularly active in keeping hospitals, doctors and healthcare providers informed of, how we're seeing the world and, our response to that. So, for example, I would have spoken to, 25 specialists, all the major hospital CEOs over the course of the past 4 weeks, just to get an insight into how they're dealing with the crisis, and their perspective on things, and how we may be able to support them, recognising that, for hospitals, doctors and many providers, their work virtually evaporated for, it's turning out to be a much shorter period than we expected, but there was a time there where people were talking about, private hospitals having no elective treatment, right through to October or November. Next slide. Okay, strategic opportunities. So certainly this is an area where most of my energies are being devoted. Just on 12 months ago now, and as a key part of a broader strategy we have in the business, we formed a joint venture with a very large American global health insurance company called Cigna Corporation. Like, they're $100 billion company. And the reason we sought that partnership with Cigna is we imagine a world which is more about healthcare, not sick care. When you think about most healthcare systems, of which NIB is part, we're really there for people once they're sick, to pay the doctor, to pay the hospital, to pay the dentist. We see a world, not too far away, in fact, here already, where courtesy of the amazing advances in data science and analytics and IoT and all sorts of digital devices, that we can predict at an individual level the risk of disease. So we can look at Bob Hawes, and with the right data and the right technology, based upon what we know about Bob's psychology, sociology, genetics, pathology, previous claims and medical experience, we can predict if Bob has, and by comparing Bob with literally billions of records, we can say if Bob has characteristics, as I say, psychologically, biologically, physiologically, genetically, A, B, C, D, and E, F, he's at risk of diseases 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And if so, the best way to prevent or manage or precisely treat those diseases is X, Y, Z. Now, this is a world in which we're trying to transform NIB into, so that we become as much about the value proposition for our members, becomes as much about helping our members with their doctors, based upon their own individual risk profile, predict the risk of disease, and hopefully with that prediction, prevent or manage or if they do get sick, more precisely treat it. So with that challenge in mind, we created the joint venture with Cigna. Cigna are already well advanced in these various sciences, and the new company is called Honeysuckle Health. And so essentially, the mission of Honeysuckle Health is to use this technology and deep data analysis to predict individual risk, and with that, predict or prevent a disease, or more precisely treat it. So, COVID-19, again, for all its misery and disruption, is right in the sweet spot for Honeysuckle Health. And, we're already talking to Cigna about opportunities in the business to accelerate the investment we're making, double, triple down on the $20 million we've already put into the venture. So it's a brand new venture run by Rod McKenzie, who used to be one of our key executives here, based in Newcastle. And I see a day where one day Honeysuckle Health is at least a business as big as NIB, because it's not only providing the type of insight and support for NIB, it's doing that for other health insurers and other healthcare systems, whether it be Department of Veteran Affairs or government funded systems like Medicare. We see a renewed, well, not a renewed, but an accelerated push around telehealth and Internet of Things at home. It's one thing for government to say, look, we'll pay for a telehealth consultation, but who's then going to provide the connectivity, the platforms, so that we can speak with our doctors, and who's going to provide the technology, the IoT devices, the symptom checkers, etc., which allow the doctor in my home to diagnose my condition, and maybe even treat my condition. So a big investment ahead for us in really cranking up telehealth and the Internet of Things. I think that will be private sector led. We're looking at, one of the natural consequences of COVID-19 will be people will have even greater aversion to going to hospitals. And so, how can we support both in terms of business and capital investment settings of care, which enable doctors and other clinicians to treat people without actually, admitting people to big institutional hospitals. We see an opportunity for us, because we're offering a broader COVID-19 related cover for our members, to be able to provide cover for specialists outside the hospitals. We live in this crazy system where the same doctor that we can pay for while she operates upon, Bob in hospital, we can't pay for her when she sees Bob in her Macquarie Street or Hunter Street surgery. Crazy for reasons lost in time, but the way it is, hopefully COVID-19 enables us to change that. We think there'll be more home delivered pharma in an Amazon style way. I was in the USA just before the COVID-19 broke as wildly as it did, and Express Scripts it's an Amazon for pharmaceuticals. So all your pharmaceuticals are home delivered, and what's more, they're even developing devices where if Mary, who's elderly, forgets to take her pills, the bottle in which the pills are contained will vibrate. It recognises that there's been no weight loss in the bottle for that day. And that's important because we know Mary's inability to access her pills because maybe she's not well or it's raining outside at brick and mortar pharmacy. And the fact that she'll often forget to take her pills is a major source of hospital admission and readmission. We're very much keen to take the technologies that we have to help communities, populations better manage the overall health and well-being of their community. Best example of that is in New Zealand, where we actually provide health insurance to an entire Maori tribe, or iwi, as they've done in New Zealand, Ngāti Whātua Ōrākei. And we're helping the tribe and the leaders of that tribe through this technology better risk profile their population. And many of these populations have, dreadful profiles in terms of diabetes, obesity, substance abuse, etc. So we certainly see a world in which health insurers are much more involved in managing discrete populations, particularly with the new technologies we think we can bring, which are more around healthcare rather than sick care. And the future of workplaces is one that's really got us fascinated. If you go back 200 years ago into a cobbler's shop, there was a person who cut the leather, a person who stitched the leather, a person who polished the leather, and then a person who sold the leather. Now, that was really easy for the point of view of managing activity and the production line and outputs and outcomes. You could see, the sale. And it was really important to people's psychology because, psychologists talk about the closure. We like as humans to see how our own individual efforts are contributing to some final product or service or outcome for people. That was largely lost courtesy of the Industrial Revolution. The quest for mass production, led to the creation of these, the division and specialization of labor. It led to us like battery hens putting people in large shops and factories. And so a lot of the basic management solution we're searching for in terms of planning, coordination of activity, giving people a sense of purpose and closure, were lost in these machine bureaucracies. And these machine bureaucracies did a good job of mass production, but they are very dehumanizing and remain very dehumanizing today, and not necessarily safe places as we're discovering. So, our return to work policies and plans, which we're working upon, are not just going to take us back to where we were. They're going to be based on a more creative and thoughtful process about, well, look, what are the fundamental challenges of management, and on a horses for courses basis within the business, how can we design workplace arrangements that are conducive, to achieving the kind of management outcomes we need. Do all of our contact center operators need to be in a single contact center, for example? Do all of our IT, do our people who have to, in IT, who have to develop in an agile way, new systems, do they need to be in an office all the time, or do they just come together virtually or in person, perhaps, when necessary? It does camaraderie and socialization in the workplace require people to be on top of each other, 5 days a week. Do we all need to work the same work hours in order to achieve, production or whatever it is we produce? So we'll certainly be taking our time in terms of planning on how we create the new workplaces and new workspaces, and how we were in the past. I think we'll have, won't be insignificant, because for example, we have real estate that we're locked into, costing us about 20 million a year. But we'll certainly be thinking well beyond, returning to, where we were before COVID-19. So I might stop there. I've probably gone longer than you wanted, Bob and Amy, but
no, it's good.
Happy to take any questions.
Thanks, Mark. No, that's a really good scope, and you've covered a lot of ground there, and which is fantastic. I think one of the things that I picked up early on that you noted was in relation to an organisation as large as NIB, but also the sector you're dealing with. I mean, health in itself is a behemoth. I imagine it's like a great big ship that has to turn. But we've seen in COVID-19 that we've had to make decisions, and we're now referring as weeks as being old history as opposed to months or years. I'm just curious as to how much engaged with health and what you're seeing that in health as a department, as an industry. And what things that you guys will be doing together differently, as we really have to, as you say, adapt in things that are happening very, very quickly, as opposed to trends and things in normal circumstances that might take months or years to reveal themselves.
Yeah, well, I think the secret success is getting started, and so some of the things I've touched upon are going to take months, years to fully develop. But we're out of the running blocks. I mainly think about, what is the value proposition for an NIB member into the future, and how does COVID-19 accelerate that? I have 4 millennial kids. Well, they're not at home, or one's at home, but anyway, they have health insurance, but they have health insurance because I pay for it, essentially. So what is going to attract them in the future? And in our thinking, becoming a member of NIB, you may or may not have health insurance. You may put that in your shopping trolley, but being a member of NIB will give you an electronic health record. It will give you an individual, very reliable insight into your risk profile and how you might better manage your risk, and support you with a broad range of services and products to do that, whether it be the risk of skin cancer and us giving you free access to dermatology and free sunblock and free drugs to improve your skin melanin, etc. So, this is going to accelerate this shift in the value proposition away from being here to protect you once you're already sick, towards protecting you from getting sick in the first place. It's going to accelerate our thinking around more virtual connectivity between our members and their providers, whether they be preventative providers or treatment or cure treatment providers. I think it's going to sound very strange to our great-grandkids and maybe our grandkids that once upon a time we saw doctors face to face. They'll go, huh? What about the risk of cross-infection? Why would you sit in a waiting room with a bunch of sick people? It'll be a very natural transition. It'll take time and investment, but it'll be very natural. Well, we're seeing it now. Very natural transition away from seeing doctors face to face to seeing them, as we're meeting today. But it does need the kind of investment in technology, that I've spoken about. And who's going to make that? We think it's on us.
Very scary. They're going to diagnose my condition, so that's you're welcome.
What's that?
Very scary that they're going to be able to diagnose give me a diagnosis on prevention and things. But anyway, I look forward to that day. We're getting a few questions through on the chat, Mark. I'm just going to throw to Amy, who's going to pick up on one or two of those.
Yeah, thanks, Bob. Mark, Kerry Doolan has asked a question about Honeysuckle Health, and for the benefit of those people that maybe don't know what Honeysuckle Health is, or the concept behind it, if you could perhaps just explain that in a little bit more broadly. And he's also interested in knowing what Honeysuckle Health is working on now and what data sources and organisations are currently involved.
Yeah, well, Honeysuckle Health is fundamentally a data science company. So, its mission in life is to collect as much data it can about individuals, and based upon by using AI and based upon algorithms which have literally been written from, in some case, billions of records, because we have a lot of US and European data, based upon those algorithms to develop an individual risk profile for you. So, if I've identified as having extreme risk of, I mentioned earlier, skin cancer and melanoma, it will identify that risk, and it will also provide NIB then with the insight into what kind of measures are most likely to cost effectively and efficaciously prevent or manage or treat that risk. So it's a data science company. Ultimately, it brings to NIB a risk profile of our entire membership. From, you imagine at the top of the pyramid, those who have acute conditions or comorbidities, typically older people, and at the bottom of the pyramid, younger, fitter people. But it'll also then be informing NIB about our strategy of intervention. How might we intervene in the lives of those members based upon their risk profile with programs that work. So at the top of the pyramid, might be more individualized case management, right down to the bottom of the pyramid, which would be more about digital engagement and coaching. So it's a data science company which will profile individual risk, and with that profile the population risk of the insured population or the general community, and based upon the science, recommend programs and interventions, products and services which are seen as being not only cost effective but efficacious and scalable, because it's important, if it's going to be successful, that the interventions we make in society can be scaled.
I've got a related question from Wayne Demard. He's asking, does the likes of Honeysuckle Health, NIB and other funds work hand in hand with health authorities to help with forecasting of health issues in various demographics? So,
yeah,
you can identify the conditions affecting certain groups of people and adjust their services to suit.
Yeah, absolutely, which is pretty much what we're doing in New Zealand with Ngāti Whātua Ōrākis, where we've said to at the request of the tribal leaders, we just haven't imposed ourselves there. We're pretty much managing the entire healthcare of the 5,000 individual members of that tribe. There's still public funding coming into the system, but it's on us to manage those people. We're like the single manager, and we're certainly one of our, it's a bit of a secret, but I'll share it with you guys. We're looking to do that in Australia with a discrete, probably a remote community, maybe in outback New South Wales, where we go in and we say to the state and Commonwealth, look, hey, you guys expect to spend X million dollars on the health and welfare of this community next year. It's not as though the baseline is particularly impressive in terms of outcome. Now, that's not to bag the public health system as it's operated. Often these systems are so fragmented in these communities. But we say to the Commonwealth State, listen, give us the money you expect to spend and let us go become the single funder. Let us go on risk and give us accountability for improving our health outcomes in this entire community. Now, you don't dare take that risk, as we're planning to do, without the kind of science and confidence that science brings you in being able to ensure that where you are intervening and managing health, that it's going to succeed.
Thanks, Amy. Thanks, Mark. We just have to wind up shortly, Mark. But I know that NIB spend a lot of effort and some resources on looking ahead. The innovation of what you're around your own organisation and the industry, and I imagine COVID-19 tossed a lot of that stuff. That you have to chuck some of the things out of the sandpit and try and find some new things to bring in. We're hearing a lot of things around the health sector that that will have to change, and life won't be the same. How do you what sort of things do you contemplate might bring on that? You mentioned telehealth, and I know that that's become a much bigger part of many of the communities around us. But there are things now that you're looking forward to try and work on that you think are going to be the next wave as we go through what could be potentially a significant amount of change that this industry hasn't seen for a long, long time?
Yeah, look, I think I've made the point a couple of times, Bob. I think what COVID-19 has done is simply accelerate our thinking. It's changed the context, and so much change, relies on context. So Honeysuckle Health, Telehealth, this idea about home delivering drugs. Now the pharmacist will won't be happy about that idea, I know, but there's a certain inevitability, as we're seeing in so many other industries, to more home-based care, including online home-based delivery. So I don't think there's any particularly new ideas which are emerged, Bob. Probably the most significant new idea which has emerged from COVID-19 is how we think about workplaces in a way that I've described. And I'm quite excited by that. I think it's an opportunity to liberate our thinking around how we work, where we work, our working hours, the way we engage, and technology's just made so many things possible that we couldn't have imagined even 20 years ago. So, now's the time to, as I mentioned, for us, not just go back to the way we were, but to take this opportunity now to completely rethink the way we organise ourselves. And I'm confident with that, through that process, we'll come up with work which is more, better coordinated, more productive, safer for people, and more rewarding for people, because it enables them to truly blend, their lives with their work.
Certainly, I think it's also making a lot of us having to confront technology as well. I know that everyone's got lots of stories now of having to, even just from the working from home, having to engage with and understand how all those things work and knit together and from your workplace, but also dealing with health itself. So look, thanks very much, Mark. We've come to the end of our time, and you've really provided us some valuable insights there, and I really appreciate you giving up your time out of yours to share that with us today. So unfortunately, I can't say everyone applause because you won't hear them, and I can't present you with a bottle of wine because it would only be virtual. So next time I see you, maybe I'll give you that. So look, I just wanted to wrap up now and thank everyone for being with us. I'd also like to remind everybody that we've got another event this week. Damien Tudor-Hope, the Minister for Small Business and Finance, is going to be with us on Friday. He had to pull out at short notice last week because Parliament had to, or the upper house at least, had to regather to pass some legislation or consider some legislation in relation to some of the stimulus packages. So I'm grateful for him to be able to schedule this Friday. So please register for that event if you're interested. Then next week, Andy Penn, the CEO of Telstra, like Mark's perspective, the technology sector has been well and truly in the COVID sites and in terms of having to respond. So Andy's presentation will be of great interest. And then the following week, we've got Tanya Constable, the CEO of the Minerals Council of Australia, on the Wednesday, the 3rd of June, and hopefully you can join us then. So the details for those and the registration links are on our website. And thank you very much for anyone who has already registered, and we look forward to others to do likewise. So thanks again to Mark. I really do appreciate your contribution today. It really helps make this series of having important people like yourself to be with us to share those insights. I'd also like to thank Jack and Amy for assisting in getting the thing to the screen, but also more importantly to the Newcastle Perm for supporting this event and supporting this series. And I, once again, on behalf of the Chamber and everyone here today, thanks for their ongoing support. Your feedback is welcome, ladies and gentlemen. Please, people have used the chat today, which is fantastic. But please get in contact with us if you've got any ideas about the series or have any feedback, particularly about a particular event. and we'll look forward to working with you to make sure what we are delivering is relevant to what you're thinking, and also relevant to the challenges that we have ahead as we move from response to recovery and reform parts of the pandemic. So thanks again. Thanks, Mark. And thanks, ladies and gentlemen, and hopefully see you on Friday.